Welcome to the Elite Event Center in Santa Clara, California. It's the March meeting of the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley, and we are so glad you are with us. I want to start out tonight in the spirit of gratitude. Gratitude that there's so many people who are interested in liberty, so many people who are curious about freedom. And so grateful for the people who have worked so hard to put this evening's program together, including and especially the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley Board. So I'm in great appreciation that they want to bring you programs where you can learn tonight about the history where freedom went away, and you'll be part of bringing it back. Our partners from Human Events, Brent Hamachek and Chris Barron, have been amazing in putting this together for us, and we are so grateful that they are helping us make this dream come true. Thank you, guys. I want to especially thank Lisa Cohen and Dave Johnson for their help in finding wonderful panelists for us tonight. And most importantly, I am thankful for the opportunity to gather with you tonight in peace. For that, we're incredibly grateful. And would you stand, please, and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I turn the program over to Keone for his opening remarks, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. On your chair tonight, there were several cards. One is an index card, and that's for Q&A after the program, after the panel discussion. If you have a question, please be succinct and write it legibly. Pass it down to the outside aisles, and we will have people come by and pick them up. We will get to as many questions as we can. Please understand if we can't get to them all, but we want to give you an opportunity to do that. To the sound guys, I'm having people tell me they can't hear me, so I wonder if there's a way you can help me. Okay, is that better? Yay! All right. All right. And there are two more cards on your chairs. You probably sat on them. Those are Liberty Forum business cards. One is for you. One is to put, but they're both for your wallet. I want you to put the other one in your wallet, and don't come back here with that one. Give that one to somebody else. Tell people we're here. Help pass on the blessing of liberty. Okay? Tonight, one of the great things about tonight is that our president, Keone Murphy, is with us, and without further ado, Keone.
Thank you, Jane. Everybody hear me okay? I can do it without the mic, too, but we'll use the technology. As Jane said, welcome to the March meeting of the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley. I thank you all for joining tonight, including me, who's joining for the first time in a long while. I'm Keone Murphy, the president of the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley, and it is my honor and my privilege to gather with all of you here tonight. From the bottom of my heart, I mean that. I also want to welcome those of you in TV land. Never forget those in TV land. I want to return to the Pledge of Allegiance that we all just spoke. I don't know if you've ever, or even recently, broken down the pledge to its core phrases. It's wonderful in its content, its word choice, and its brevity. I'd ask each of you to recite it, jot it down, and think about the pledge in its parts and its totality. Liberty and justice for all is truly under assault by the very entity constituted to protect and defend those unalienable rights endowed by our Creator. Having just pledged allegiance to the republic that flag stands for, I can proudly state that the mission of the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley is to promote the principles of American liberty to all here in the Santa Clara Valley. We meet on the second Tuesday of each month. We're a 501c3 educational organization. Your contributions are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Some announcements for tonight. I want to start by thanking the Liberty Forum Board of Directors. And if you're here, please stand and be recognized. All the fellow directors to stand up and be recognized. They're the ones that do the work up front, like tonight, but also behind the scenes that you never see. They make it work. I also want to recognize and thank, and we've done this many times, but Human Events, specifically Brent and Chris. This event was a vision of Brent's, and thanks to all of you, thanks to a lot of the hard work that went on behind the scenes, it's come to fruition. So thank you very much. Finally, I want to thank especially Jane Kearney. Jane, where are you? I'm going to embarrass you for a moment. You're really in the back. I want to say that Jane is sometimes my babysitter. I'll say things to her to just make sure they kind of sound right, but most of the time, it's she who calibrates me. I'll have some ideas and I'll sound them off Jane, and they always seem to work better after she gets a chance to hear them out. She spends a lot of time getting together the speakers that you all enjoy. And I know that listening to me wasn't part of the job description that she signed up for, but Jane, thank you very much. Doesn't happen without your work. My wife and I struggle when we shop because we don't want to buy items made in China. Most recently, I needed some barbecue equipment. What could be more American than barbecue equipment? Of the 5 manufacturers I saw in the store, all 5 were made in China. Going to a second store, I found a charcoal chimney that was made in Taiwan. Not made in the USA, but made by China's top enemy. I still don't have a long tongs, so I sacrificed some arm hair to the barbecue flames. A small price to pay, but I'd encourage you, please pick up the product you're considering to buy, and if it's made in China, you can probably buy something else. I want to call out the graciousness of some Liberty Forum attendees. As you know, members attend our events at no charge. However, we do ask non-members to pay a nominal entry fee. Many pay that fee at the time of their registration, but what I want to highlight is that oftentimes those non-members who've paid to attend meetings contact us later on and say, I can't make it to the evening, but don't worry about returning the money. And I know it's a small thing, but it humbles me to know that we're in the presence, or those people didn't attend, but you get my point. It's an outstanding group that you're part of. It was at this podium, actually the one in Mountain View, in 2011 that I heard Andrew Breitbart speak. His quirkiness was only exceeded by his passion for his audience to do something. Shoot a video with your phone, he said. Have a discussion, get involved. I did. I got active with Liberty Forum, first as a volunteer, then as a board member, and here tonight I stand before you, humbly your forum president. But I still recall Andrew Breitbart's appeal. Members are why we gather, and memberships are the vehicle for us to have the great speakers we do. So tonight, we partner with Human Events. Human Events. To co-host a panel on Liberty Lost. Many of you will be getting renewal requests, and I'll ask you to please renew. Rates are the same. We haven't raised rates in several years. Liberty Forum is a great organization and a hell of a deal. And if you've seen what's gone on with gas prices, we're a real good deal. So please don't dismiss the email that you get asking for you to renew your membership. Upcoming speakers. On April 12th, we host a very special guest, Tom Homan, the former acting director of ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. He's going to address the unprecedented crisis at the border. While our eyes turn to the invasion of Ukraine, we continue to have our own profound issues of sovereignty as well as a humanitarian crisis at our southern border. You may recognize Tom from his many TV appearances and his plain-spoken admonitions gained from his extensive career in law enforcement. Again, that's Tom Homan on Tuesday, April 12th. And on Tuesday, May 10th, we're pleased to announce best-selling author and content manager for the Bongino Report, Matt Palumbo, will be with us. His talk, Inside the Secret Network of George Soros, will reveal how Soros' intentions, values, and money are influential in many areas, including what's happening in Ukraine right now. He's also going to speak about electing the leftist district attorneys throughout the nation. We look forward to bringing you these timely programs, and we hope you'll join us.
Okay, again, you'll find some reports on current regimes that are undergoing communism now, such as China, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, Vietnam, Venezuela, and now our new member of a totalitarian Russia, which has invaded a sovereign nation, Ukraine. Okay, finally, we're opening a museum, the first of its kind, dedicated to the victims of communism in the Washington, D.C. area, about a block and a half from the White House. So we opened that up in May. So we'd love to have each and every one of you come by and visit. When I opened up, I deliberately breezed by a couple very large numbers. And that's what many people do when they hear 100 million dead. So think about that. That's more than 2.5 times the population of this state, okay? At the hands of totalitarian regimes around the world, okay? We're going to talk about that in a little bit of detail, but your panel members tonight, they lived it. They escaped from it. So they know what it's like personally. Each one of those 100 million is a person to them, a family member, a relative, a friend. Okay? These communist regimes deliberately murdered or simply due to gross incompetence killed millions of people because they were wed to an ideology that it could blindly ignore the suffering of those people. Their systems were inherent failures, and when it failed, they simply doubled down on those policies and continued to do it, despite the cost. Okay. In addition to the dead, you had hundreds of millions more who suffered and lived under those regimes. They suffered violence, deprivation, repression, loss of liberty, loss of the freedom of speech. They suffered severe poverty, all to maintain this thing called communism. So what was it like to live under such a regime? It's designed to crush the human spirit and any resistance to that system. Our panel understand that firsthand because they lived it, lived under tyranny under these brutal regimes. And each paid a price for taking a stand against that regime, the dissident movements. They share their stories that strip away the veneer of this great thing called socialism and communism that so many people want to spread and try again, despite the reality that's failed everywhere it's been tried. They also offer a cautionary tale for those in our nation that seem enamored with these systems and are willing to sacrifice our individual freedoms in pursuit of what history has proven to be an unachievable utopian goal. Okay, so I admire the courage of the people you're going to see tonight because, again, they lived it. They stood up, and we should emulate that courage that they have in taking a stand when we see our freedoms threatened. Thanks.
First off, let me say what it is a pleasure to be here tonight. I haven't spent a lot of time in California, but thank you for your hospitality, and thank you for agreeing to drop the masks before I got here. Like, I really appreciate I like to think that Gavin Newsom did it for me, and not just for the Super Bowl, so I appreciate that. Thank you to the victims of communism, and thank you to the Liberty Forum for being a part of this amazing event. And I know Jane has been thanked a million times, but she's going to get thanked again. She has suffered through many long phone calls with Brent and I, which Brent and I are used to having these calls by ourselves, which are fine, but I always feel bad when a third person has to be involved with them for that long. Thank you, Jane, for your amazing patience on this, for following this through to the end. It's clearly an amazing event and an amazing group here, so thank you all for being here. Last March, I was at Trump Doral in Miami, and I heard Brent Hamachek give his dissident talk. And I had read some of Brent's piece, not the entire piece at this point because it was very long. Good, but very, very long. And I came into it kind of a skeptic. I wanted to believe that What our panelists faced all across the globe was not something that we were going to face here in the US. I wanted to believe that we weren't now political dissidents. I listened to Brent's talk, and like the hundreds of people who were in that room that day, I left changed. He had all of us eating out of the palm of his hands. I've never been so excited to be wrong or so scared about something as I was when I left that room that day. The fact is that the experiences of the dissidents who you're going to hear from tonight are not just simply historical accounts. They're warnings about a future, and a not so distant future, not something that's going to happen in 2 or 3 generations, but something that's happening every single day all across this country. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce one of the most intelligent, most incredible speakers. When I introduced him at Trump Doral, I said he's the best person here on this panel that you've never heard of. Now I can't say that because now Brent's almost an international superstar. It's my honor, my pleasure to introduce Brent Hamachek, managing editor of Human Event and just a fantastic human being who, if it wasn't for him, none of this would be happening tonight.
All right, let's get serious. First of all, speaking of serious, I need to say a couple of thank yous, but a couple of them I'm going to hold till the end. One of them I'm going to say now, and I'm going to thank our publisher at Human Events, Jeff Webb, for making this possible and letting this idea come to life. Because if I don't do that, tomorrow I won't be working at Human Events. So, boss, if you're watching, thank you. I appreciate it. So this is serious stuff tonight, and I never dreamt that when I sat down at my kitchen counter January of 2021 and had 7,500 words that were in my head, so I needed to get them out. So I sat down in an afternoon and I typed them on a keyboard. And those 7,500 words have now led us here till tonight. This is the most humbling experience I have ever had. And as a recovery guy, trust me, I've had a lot of humility in my life. But to have the 5 people that are going to sit up here in a few minutes and talk to us, to hear their stories, and to be able to put that together with the Liberty Forum and with the Victims of Communism Foundation, what an unbelievable privilege. So, they're going to give you some warnings tonight because they're going to talk about, all of them are concerned about what's going on in America today. And here's the way that you need to listen to what's about to happen, because Dickens had this all figured out. And it's all in A Christmas Story when the third ghost comes and shows him his horrible future. And Ebenezer says, "Spirit, are these the things that will be or the things that might be?" So tonight, you'll hear a little bit about the things that were and the things that might be here, because we still have an opportunity to change that. So I would ask, with that, we will bring out our panel, and I would love it if everybody in this room who is able would get on your feet and give them a really warm welcome. Okay. All right. Is this on? Am I projecting? Is this on? Now it works. Now it works. I understand we're having an issue with our video feed. Our audio feed is fine. So for anyone out there who's experiencing trouble watching, don't give up because it'll be up soon. So let's get started just with a quick introduction. Let me go around the table, and then we'll have all you tell a little bit about yourselves. First, we have Peter Wolf from East Germany. We have Frank de Verona from Cuba. We have Peter Palacek from Czechoslovakia. We have Sutton Van O from Vietnam, and Tatiana Menaker from the Soviet Union. Thanks all of you for joining us tonight for this conversation.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
So we're going to start by having each one of the panel members tell you just a little tiny bit about themselves to sort of set in your minds their qualifications, if you will, for being with us here tonight. Let's start. Peter Wolf, please tell our audience a little bit about you.
Okay, I'm very happy to be here and like to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Peter Wolf, and I was born shortly after World War II in Leipzig, East Germany. Of course, East Germany at that time was totally controlled by communism. My father died a very tragic death in 1955. In 1955, my sister escaped from East Germany to West Germany. That left my mother and I. When my mother returned, she was interrogated by the Stasi for several days, and then we were labeled traitors of the state. Now that meant my mother had to work hard labor to earn a living. We lived in an apartment that was barely fit the necessities. We ate rancid food. We had minimal medical care, and my schooling would end at age 14, grammar school. As a youth, I played in bombed-out buildings. We thought it was a lot of fun to throw rocks at old grenades until they exploded. We secretly listened to Radio Free Europe. Some of you may remember the posters of Radio Free Europe and families huddled around them. It's exactly how it was. Religion was strictly forbidden. It was a weakness. You didn't trust anyone, neighbors or friends. You were fearful of spies everywhere. The Stasi, the secret police, was everywhere. My mother orchestrated a daring escape on Christmas Eve 1959, where we left East Germany. We immigrated to America in 1961 and were reunited with my sister. It wasn't until later that I realized that Christmas Eve, my mother gave me probably one of the most special gifts any mother can give a child, and that was the gift of freedom. I became a citizen in 1966 and went to the University of Illinois, where I graduated in physics and math. I had a great engineering job. I found religion, and I realized that the freedom that I had here in America and the religion produced a lot of happiness. Freedom by itself sometimes gets away with itself, but when you bridle it with religion, you get a lot of happiness. Today, I'm married to my wife for 46 years. We have 4 children and 15 grandchildren. I have lived the American dream, which means I own my own business. I own a modest home with a little bit of land. I married the perfect wife, and we enjoy our posterity. Hobbies, I play chess, ham radio, bicycling, photography, and more recently I started Wordle. Some of you may know that it is a sweet game. 20 patented inventions.
Wow.
I speak at high schools and universities frequently, including the Ronald Reagan Library, and tell them my story. I'm very happy to be here and hope that my comments will help you better understand what it was like. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Frank, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I was born in 1943 in the city of Camagüey, Cuba. My dad was a cattleman. We had a ranch, a cattle ranch, about 3,600 acres. And I had a wonderful childhood. Cuba, I grew up in Cuba in the 1950s. Cuba was one of the most advanced countries in all of Latin America. Just to give you an idea, our peso had the same value as the dollar. You could go to the bank in Cuba and give 1 million pesos, you would get $1 million, because we had a very favorable balance of trade, unlike other Latin American countries. We were number one in automobiles in Latin America. Practically every index, we had color TV right after the United States got theirs, first in Latin America. We had a bunch of color TV stations, lots of radio stations, free press. And then in 1959, we had a tyrant by the name of Fidel Castro that came down from the Sierra Maestras mountain. As soon as his brother came down and took Santiago de Cuba, he began shooting people on the wall with no due process of law, no trials. So terror was implanted in Cuba from the very beginning to terrify the population. They took away our weapons. That's why it's so important America keeps the Second Amendment. We can never give our weapons, never. So I came to study in the United States when I was 14 years old to a Naval Academy in St. Petersburg, Florida. My brother came too, and we were at Georgia Tech. My brother and I were studying there in mid-March 1961. We came to Miami, where my parents were living at the time, and we both announced that we wanted to train to invade Cuba, to free Cuba from communism. So on April 1st, 1961, I arrived in Guatemala, up in the mountains, the base tracks, and there I had 13 days of training. On April 13, we were taken to Puerto Cabezas, and from there, we invaded Cuba at the Bay of Pigs. We could have won if President Kennedy had not changed all the plans that were prepared by the Pentagon and by the CIA. We're supposed to land in Trinidad, not at the Bay of Pigs. Trinidad is right next to the Escambray Mountains. It had piers. It had 18,000 people that were anti-Castro. It was the ideal place to go, particularly with our obsolete World War II Liberty-type ships. But unfortunately, all of that changed. So we lost the war. There were 1,500 of us, and we were fighting 225,000 soldiers. We were captured prisoners. We were sentenced to 30 years of hard labor, and we were severely tortured while we were in prison. We were drinking rats, dead rats, in the water of Castillo del Príncipe. I contracted hepatitis and dysentery. After the trial, I was 214 of us who were formerly rich, although I was very poor at the time. They took away all my family's property. We ended up in the Isle of Pines in a tiny little room that had a capacity for 40, one toilet for 214 people. And for 7 months, we had no soap, no water, and no toilet paper. 7 months like that. So we were freed when President Kennedy finally helped us and got us out. They traded us for baby food and medicine. So I came back to the United States. I have 3 college degrees. I worked in the school system 36 years in Miami, all the way to deputy superintendent of schools. Then I became an associate professor of social studies at the State University in Miami called Florida International University. I've written 28 books, 500 articles. I am happily married. In fact, one of the priests from the brigade that was in prison with me married to my wife. I have a daughter, and she has a son. Well, with the Chinese, one family. One daughter, and my daughter had one boy. So with the Chinese. So that's basically it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Frank. Next is Peter Palacek. And before Peter speaks, I have to tell you, Peter's the reason we're here tonight. Because when I spoke to this group a year ago or last year, Peter came up to me afterwards, and the things that he said to me after my speech were what motivated me to call Chris Barron the next morning and tell him and say, Chris, we have to do something about this. So with that special thank you, Peter, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Peter Palacek, and I've been coming to these meetings, for... Am I okay?
Turn on. Good.
I've been coming to these inspirational meetings of Liberty Forum since 2014. And I'd like to first thank, Jane. We talked about this actually about 3 years ago when we were still meeting in the Portuguese Hall in Mountain View, and I'd like to thank Brent and Chris for organizing it. I was born in formerly known Czechoslovakia in the first year of World War II. My father had already left with thousands of others to fight the Nazis on the Western Front. 2 years later, we got a knock on the door after midnight, and my mom was taken to a Nazi concentration camp. I was 2 years old and left alone by the Gestapo in our apartment. Next day, I started hiding with other little boys on a small farm in southern Bohemia. After 6 years of war, my family was reunited and my father served as the Czech ambassador in the American sector of Berlin. There were barely 3 years of freedom for Czechoslovakia before we had a Moscow-backed communist coup. Our foreign minister, the son of our first president and founder, was defenestrated during a night raid 2 weeks after the communist coup. My father was arrested. He was tortured daily for 3 years, then sentenced on fabricated charges to 13 years in communist gulags. He was assigned to Camp L, L standing for liquidation. There, guards were rewarded for liquidating political prisoners. My father served 9 years in harsh uranium mines. The highest grade of uranium in the world was found in Yakimov in the 1950s in Bohemia. All production was shipped daily to Moscow. The prisoners had no protective equipment whatsoever. They worked with their bare hands. The winters were very harsh. My family were allowed only 5-minute visit during all 9 years. His sentence was fully nullified in 1968. Some 200 political prisoners were sentenced by the communist regime to be hanged. Imagine how the relatives of those innocent patriots must have felt coming to the government office in 1968 to hear that the fabricated sentences carried out on them had been mistakes and had been nullified after their executions. 280. I was ostracized through my primary, secondary, and university schooling. 4 times orders were issued by the Department of Education to terminate my studies. The Soviet occupation of 5 Warsaw Pact nations in '68 was similar to what you see in Ukraine today. I spent a full year fighting Soviets and communist propaganda before my ticket to freedom arrived. A letter of admission to the Graduate School of Business at Stanford. In September '69, I sailed under the Verrazano Bridge, like my colleague Peter here. 1 year later, my life escaped through the Yugoslav-Italian border at great risk because the border guards were ordered to shoot to kill after so many Czechs were escaping through Yugoslavia. I came here to this country with $50 and never took a penny from Uncle Sam. After my graduation, I worked 4 full-time jobs. We raised 3 sons, and now our enlarged family of 15 has 8 degrees from Stanford, of which 5 are Stanford MBAs. The full American dream was realized. It is up to all of us to make sure the American dream stay here for future generations.
Thank you, Peter. So it's easy for us when we think about communism and totalitarianism to think about Eastern Europe, and it's easy for us to think about Cuba. Of course, today it's very easy for us to think about China. But then there's that other communist country that always gets forgotten, and that's Vietnam. Sutton, will you tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience can understand who you are?
Okay, thank you, Brian. First of all, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, to coming tonight with us. Thank you, David, and that introduced me to this forum. Thank you, my lady. I was married her in 1961, November, after my graduation from the military academy. I was born in 1937 in South Vietnam. I got a French education. I graduated from the French school, taught by the Catholic brothers. From 1946 to 1956, 10 years in the school, and close, case in the school. And after, when, the communists start attacking, the South Vietnam in 1999, 1959. And I was wondering that, I have to do something for my country. And I volunteered to engage, into the military academy as a cadet. And after my graduation of 1961, I was, at the time, the sub-lieutenant, and going directly to the combat ground. And after 15 years struggling with the war time in Vietnam, unfortunately, we failed the war, and the communists imprisoned me from 1975 to 1988. That means 13 years. To me, the time I'm not blaming anyone, because that's my duty, that's my work to do something for my country. And so I'm so pleased, to get the revenge of the communists. I don't blame the communists either, but I blame because the war in Vietnam is very, very righteous, and I blame only some of the American leader who misled the war, and we have been putting in the very harm situation, and we don't have enough ammunition, we don't have money, and even the time Joe Biden was the senator, he cut off, he tried to every way to cut off the supply to Vietnam War. That make us suffer a lot, because wonder a weapon without ammunition, just a piece of wood. Just a wood.
Right.
No way to fight, okay? And my career started, as sub-lieutenant until I got major in 1951. After only 11 years, I was promoted into major, and I was happy to be engineer battalion commander. After the war, in April 1975, the communists put me in their prison and moved me from south to north and north to south. About 5 prisons. 5 prisons. They always treat me, worse than the animal. Always underfeed me. I was very skinny. I weighed about 170 pounds, but at the time I was weighed about less than 100 pounds. Just a skeleton. Okay, and then fortunately, after spending 13 years in the prison, the communists relieved me with the intervention of the U.S. government, and I have to spend 3 more years with them, in the big prison. After the small prison, and then the big prison. I forget to tell you about my very short story of escaping from the prison in the north. I sneak in the jungle for 15 days. After seizing me back, they put me in the cell for 4 months, completely black, in the dark side. When I got out of that cell, I almost blind, because I'm not familiar with the sunlight. When I first stepped out of the cell, I fell down immediately, and the communists told me that don't open your eye, and try to familiar with the light, and I heard that, and then I do what they said. Fortunately, my eyes is still okay, but my vision is weakening, and that's all about my short story, I want to let my time for answering questions about people who concern about my story. But my love is to tell the American people be aware of the communism, because they don't know how the communist grew, and the young generation must be not indoctrinated in the school.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about education. So now here's the person you're all waiting for, because we have a lady on the panel. Tatiana from the Soviet Union. Share your background with everyone.
Okay, I was one of the refuseniks, people who, this is the group of people who applied for immigration from the Soviet Union and were rejected. This group of people was treated especially harsh, so other people would not apply for immigration. Actually, at this time, everyone was dreaming to get out of the Soviet Union. Scientists was inventing some kind of balloons which radars cannot get. Everyone was talking how to get out. Finally, one group of people was trying hijack a 12-seater airplane. We got caught, death sentences, 15-year sentences. It was practically impossible to get out. And today, people just don't understand what this is human right, which recorded by the United Nations for people to immigrate from their own country. And all those people had the same problem. They cannot get out. And people in America don't understand what any country which becomes communist becomes concentration camp with no way out. And people just ignorant about it. But one thing, I was born in the city which doesn't exist anymore, and in the country which also doesn't exist. Soviet Union, now Russian Federation. Leningrad, where I was born, is now St. Petersburg. It was funny, but I grew up near President Putin, and I was his classmate in school. Even more funny thing, that our mutual teacher, still alive, she's 98 years old, and she lives in Palo Alto. I don't want to tell her name because the line of journalists will be staying to her. But I can tell you what a few years ago she called me and told me, Tanya, I'm really sorry. I believed myself in this propaganda. And what could I do? And this is because I was listening to the same teachers until I was 15. I put bet $3 that Putin will invade Ukraine and he will start the war. Even military analysts, specialists told, no, he will not. I, with my musical education, told he will. Because I knew his state of mind, because I was listening to the same teachers. And the idea of victory, this sweet idea of victory which Soviet Union had in 1945, this is the best thing he lives still. He still plays, you wouldn't believe, but last year he played surrender of Reichstag, surrender of Germany, and he played a person who received, he wants to be Stalin. He wants to be Stalin. And he will never stop. He will never stop. Okay, I was born the same like Putin in a communal apartment. I had even room bigger than he had. And, but you see the difference, what my family was family of the intelligentsia, which was persecuted, and we always had like stream of people coming back from prison camps. Only wives, husbands been executed. Only widows who spent time in Kazakhstan, in Siberia. And I was, as a child, seeing them, listening to their crying. And when I grew up, it was completely different state of mind. My grandmother had a saying, even cat works for KGB. So I was completely different state of mind. And when I grew up, I went to university. I was stupid enough to go to Department of Philosophy because other philosophies instead Marxism were not allowed. Actually, that's what Goose University, Ayn Rand graduated from it. But the problem was that Lenin took 100 philosophers, put them on the philosophical ship, shipped them out of the Soviet Union, so she still had 2 years to study with good philosophers. Stalin executed the remainder in 1941, so when I came there, it was no one to study with. Anyway, when I graduated, I couldn't get a job, you know why? It was first program at the university for Americans to study Russian, and I was stupid enough to communicate with them. It went on my file, so ever when I would go and ask for job, they told me, you know what, you communicated with Americans, go away. I actually got into Christian Underground. I'm Jewish, actually, but I wrote articles for Underground Feminist magazine, and all those Christians were severely persecuted. And simultaneously, I was in the underground Jewish education. You know, communist countries severely atheistic, severely. It's militant atheism which is punished tremendously. From the kindergarten, from the nursery school, people taught children, taught to say, there are no God, forget about this. So, I'm asking my friend, who was excellent philosopher, young lady, she was so high educated, she corresponded with Cardinal Ratzinger, who became a Catholic Pope later. And I asked her, Tanya, why are we persecuting Christians and don't touch us Jews? She told me, you know what, when we finish us off, you will be the next. The day she was exiled with other 6 girls, we arrested all of us during the lecture about Jewish Shabbat. So we all been arrested and had huge problems. I realized I need to get out of this country. Out of this country. Anyway.
She's watching her time.
Yes. And you know what? Because I was chronically, you couldn't be unemployed in Russia. You know, it's 72 number penal code. If you're not working for months, you consider it to be parasite and exiled. So I was working as a boiler room operator with my 2 university educations and making money typing documents to people who applied to immigrate. And you know what? I realized that the only way to get out of Russia is to marry a foreigner. So I went with my husband outside to the forest because we couldn't talk in the house. It's like was wired, phone was wired. Once I picked up the phone and I heard my own conversation 3 days ago. And so we went to the forest and discussed it and decided fictitiously separate. Each of us will marry foreigner and get out. It took just 4 years. But when my finally bridegroom arrived, I was pregnant with real baby from the real marriage, you know? So when I came to the office, we didn't know what to do with me, to whom to write the baby. Anyway, it was funny, but finally it took 4 years for me and later 2 years for my husband to get out of the Soviet Union. American State Department was informed that I'm having fictitious marriage and I'm refusnik. We knew what refusnik are. I was fighting to get out of Russia for 10 years. It's like pretty good time. And later I got my husband. In the United States, if you give me 1 more minute.
Should I give her 1 more minute? You can have 1 more minute.
Okay. In the United States, it was the funniest thing. I got arrested also. But this time, I got arrested on the campus of San Francisco State University. I even written an article. First, my article in English, and my English was 0 when I came. I went to university when I was 50, okay, together with my children at the same time. And my first article was called My Second Marxist Indoctrination. I found such brainwashing machine of Marxism, which I even didn't have in Russia, in the Soviet Union. American professors are all in delirium of Marxism. They had no idea that Marxism failed in every country it was tried. Instead of teaching, they using their classrooms just for propaganda of Marxist-Lenin's ideas. Can you imagine? arrested by KGB, coming to the United States, sitting in San Francisco State University, and near all disheveled, crazy communist lady turns to another professor and says, "Comrade Robertson, huh? I had not comrades in the Soviet Union, now I have them in the United States." And you see, this is crazy because I had some conversation with this lady. I described her in one of my articles. Actually, she had first haircut since. And you see, she went to the dean and said what I threatened her life. If I wanted, I would strangle her, but it's okay. It's okay. But you see, I was arrested, and only one from Soviet immigrant community I heard Miranda rights. I had excellent police force coming to me. I was arrested, and it was a pretty famous case. I had very good lawyer. Anyway, I survived. I built excellent three-story house for $2 million in San Francisco. I have 3 children, two sons and 1 daughter. 2.5 grandchildren, 1 on the way. And what else? Practically, it's some kind of excellent time in my life. I even have a boyfriend at 73.
That's pretty good. All right, so here's a question for the audience. After hearing those opening statements and hearing the background that our panel has shared, how many of you people think they're qualified to chat just a little bit about what it's like to live under a totalitarian system? All right, let's talk about life under that kind of system. And let's just kind of be general and go wherever you want to go here. You know, we in America, we almost make jokes about things like, it's like waiting for bread in the Soviet Union, you know, joking about the inefficiencies of command societies and so on. Everyday life, things in everyday life and how difficult they are. Peter Wolf, tell us a little bit about everyday life, what it was like in a communist country.
You know, I've mentioned before that given my talk to universities and high schools and so on, and church groups. And what absolutely amazed me, when I started my talk, I said that I grew up in a communist country. And one of the young men one time asked, "So what's wrong with communism anyway?" And all of a sudden I realized that these young people had no idea what communism was all about. I changed my introduction at that point, and let me tell you what communism is. Communism gives you free housing, free education, free medical care, free child care, and free vacations. Doesn't sound that bad, does it? But there's a catch. And the catch is that everything is owned or operated by the government. Every aspect, everyone is expected to work, just like she mentioned, and you were also told what books to read. Uncle Tom's Cabin is an American book. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote it. It was mandatory reading in East Germany. The reason being is that we were told that's how Americans lived. A very oppressed, if you remember, very oppressed society in that book. What and how you could write. I used to write with my left hand. My teacher would tear everything up because a good communist would write everything with the right hand. So nowadays I write with my right hand, but I throw the ball with my left hand. You had to ask permission where you wanted to travel. What movies you wanted to watch was restricted. What kind of music you could listen to. What news you would hear and see. What appliances you could own. If you were a good communist, maybe they would give you a TV or a refrigerator. If not, you wouldn't get it. How much money you could save. Going to church was forbidden, as I mentioned before. It was a weakness. You had to vote. You had to vote in a free society. I went with my mother one time, and the way she voted was someone sat there and they had 2 books. One where she signed, and the other one, if she signed the wrong place, he would write her name. So they would look where you would be voting and how you would be voting. You had no choice. You had no freedom. You were watched all the time. Children were asked to spy on their parents. People lived in constant fear. There was no hope. And quite sadly, I remember that at least on a monthly basis, someone was so frustrated in my little town that they committed suicide. It was not uncommon at all. People were just so hopeless.
Yeah.
That's what communism is all about.
But I think it's probably got to be better than in the Soviet Union. They must have done it right. If it was that bad in East Germany. Tatiana, what was everyday life like in the Soviet Union? And if you have a thought or two about that. I bet she's got something to say.
Sure. As you understand, I'm female. So I will describe life from female point of view. Let's say I spent 1 month approximately in the hospital, in abortion clinic, doing underground research. Actually, clinic was located again near former Putin's house. You know what? I knew what situation is horrible, but what it's so horrible, I even couldn't imagine. Can you imagine? It's a group of women, every day it was a new group of women. Approximately, I interviewed 1,000 women. No one of them had own bedroom with her husband. 1,000 women at the center of Leningrad. Some women had 40 abortions until they were 40, because it was no contraceptives. Okay? And plus, I can tell you that all those wonderful procedures, dentistry also, but I'm talking about only women, been without anesthesia. Even when I was leaving and I left Russia in 1985, they still didn't have anesthesia for the dentistry. Can you imagine a root canal with no anesthesia? By the way, this is free health care we had. Okay? Regarding shopping, practically every woman in Russia had wonderful chance to leave work at age 55. By Russian standards, she was already old hag, and all what she did, she was staying in lines for food. It was usually in each family, a woman older than 55 was spending her life like watching, oh, in this store we had meat, let's go there. 100 people staying. People seeing the line would stay in line without knowing what we sell, because something we sell, in worst case, we can exchange it to something else. Let's imagine I was staying in line for boots. It was already know my size at the time, but when I came to the seller, so I bought any other size, I will exchange it. And last scene I will see, like, which catched my, let's say, my memory, it was line for bananas. And one man was trying to cut in line, and he was with the baby in the stroller. Angry women pushed baby stroller straight in the middle of the street under the buses. Can you imagine how angry people will? Bananas, just bananas, okay? Mm-hmm. I will not tell you about the children's hospital. It was a more horrible experience, but I need extra time. If you give me, I can tell you.
I'm afraid to not give her extra time, but I promise we'll come back to you. You mentioned healthcare, though. Cuba, of course, has a perfect healthcare system. We hear about that all the time from Americans who say how wonderful it is. Frank, since you left Cuba, you've devoted your entire life to fighting back and informing people. You've stayed very much in touch with what's been going on in Cuba. Talk about what life is like for people in that country, what they've suffered. Once you got here and have been able to stay in touch and inform others.
Well, Cuba is a merciless totalitarian state. For such a tiny island with 6 million people, 300,000 people have been thrown in jail. Tens of thousands have been shot on the wall with no due process of law. Thousands of people have died in the Strait of Florida, eaten by sharks trying to get to the United States. the standard of living from that prosperous nation that I knew in the 1950s now competes with Haiti to see which is the most prosperous nation, Haiti or Cuba. Cuba is a cancer that has spread all over Latin America, into Venezuela, into Bolivia, into Nicaragua. Cuba has intervened in Africa, in Asia. Cuba has sent drugs to the United States that have killed millions of people here. And Cuba in the Vietnam War, I mean, we have a Vietnam veteran right here, had troops in the Ho Chi Minh Trail killing Americans. It had Cubans running concentration camps. In the Hanoi Hilton, 3 Cuban torturers were torturing American pilots, and one of them, a lieutenant commander from the Navy, Earl Coubet, died because of those tortures. Well, the worst part was they took 18 US pilots from Hanoi to Cuba, and they tortured them by cutting their noses and their ears, and each one of them could not be released, and they were assassinated in Cuba. Cuba has always been an enemy of the United States. Right now, the Soviet Union has given Cuba nuclear submarines, mobile cyber stations to spy on US satellites, and Cuba is a direct threat to the security of America today. The standard of living is horrible. They started rationing food from the very beginning. There's very little food in Cuba. People are desperate. We have entire towns with no water, 0 water. The infrastructure is crumbling in Cuba. They haven't changed the sewers of Cuba. They're open, so the excrement goes into the water that people drink. It is really a nightmare. That's why people in Cuba are so desperate to get out any way they can. It's very serious having seen a country that was so prosperous in the 50s to see what it is today, which is an absolute terrible country to be at.
Thank you. Peter, you were a little bit of a troublemaker in school, is our understanding, when you were in university. I can't imagine why you'd be rebellious, because I'm sure the educational system was wonderful. Share a little bit about what education was like in a communist country.
Let's start with the schooling education. But first, I'd like to say that we both, communist Czechoslovakia, went exactly through the same what Peter described and Tatiana. So I had about a couple of dozen points. I'll miss it. I'll tell you, something more. Let's start with the health scare. Health scare, I was lucky because out of these 5 of us, I worked in Czech Republic for 10 years now, in the post-communist era. But the health scare, if I need something over there, you have to wait in lines and sign up. So in my high school, 2 girls were very good actors. I just called them from nowhere, because 50 years, you don't speak to them. Come on, just make, these knocks, go through the back door. So I go through the back door to her, she's primary doctor in the hospital. She said, Peter, she opens, bottle of cognac. We talk about the last whatever years. And then when I leave, I go through the waiting room where are 40, 50 people waiting for hours for medical care. You both missed, fundraising. Fundraising, and I'm so humbled to be here with somebody who was at the Bay of Pigs and fighting in Vietnam, in Czechoslovakia in 60s. We had every month came to you in the office, a representative of the trade unions of our Communist Party, ask you for donation, 20 bucks, 50 bucks. I said, what for? Vietnam. I said, I'm against the war. And the communists told me, well, listen, Americans are just bombing the villages, killing kids. We are building our hospitals over there for the money. I said, no, thank you. I'm, against it. Next morning, you go through the entry of the factory or office with 2,000 employees, and there is big board of shame. And that was always my name, Peter Palacek, with 20 others. 20 of us were so proud. And maybe additional hundreds were just envious. Why didn't we do it? Why aren't we? You have to show, example. Let me go to Tatiana's. She mentioned the propaganda everywhere. I was lucky. I got invitation. It was 2007 to go to Prague to my 50th reunion of my high school. So imagine 50th reunion of the high school. You don't see these people for 50 years. High school so far, I went there. In my classroom, we had, 42. 13 of us left abroad because of communism. Some of them passed away, so we were 22 in a room. 22 in a room, and after a couple of beers, after an hour, everybody was given 3 minutes to tell his story. And I started, Joanne, do you remember March 1953? Stalin died in March 1953. It was gloom everywhere, not for the whole day, for the whole week. Everybody cried. I said, Rhoda, why did you cry the whole day? He said, Peter, I do apologize. I do apologize. I wanted to make, good grades. Okay, next one. Why did you cry the whole day? I remember it, like it was today. Mom told me, her job is iffy. Please cry. Maybe I'll save my job. Number 3, boy said, listen, I believe Stalin was the God. He was the God. He was the best in our world. I do apologize to you. 9 out of 10 apologized. The 10th, we knew already at that time she was the leftist. She was silent. She said, Peter, you are so stupid as you were 50 years ago. I'm still the communist. So,
I think he was a troublemaking student. Your pride in being on that list, that's kind of like people getting excited when they get taken down off Facebook, isn't it? Only a little bit more serious. Sutton, I want to turn to you. We talk a lot about how cruel and tough American prisons are, and we're always talking about prison reform because the inmates have such a tough go of it. But one of the things about communism is that when you control people's lives, it starts to get to be fun to harm those lives. You were inside a communist prison camp. You alluded to a little bit of it a minute ago in your opening statement, but tell people what it was like, some of the experiences you had in that special form of human cruelty.
Okay, thank you, friend, for asking. Actually, I'm coming to this forum. Just one purpose, to tell you about the real story, and the real lesson I learned under the ruling of the communists. The communists aim at 3 aspects. 1, the prisoner. 2, the civilian. 3, the children. Firstly, they treat their prisoner much worse than, animals. They always unfeed them, trying to kill them without wasting a bullet. That's what the communism ready to the prisoner. So if you survive in the prison, we go outside of the prison, you will be facing another prison, the whole society.
Yeah.
The whole society. They control you, control not only your physical being, but even your mind. And there you have no way, to move up, to restart your life after the prison time. That's for the prison. But I spent a lot, 13 years in the prison. I understand that, a lot. But, that is, very long story. It will make about, hours, to tell. And so, I just skip it. I skip that. And then, I tell you about the second subject, subject to the communists. They aim to the civilian. Firstly, in 1975, after the fall of Saigon, all the South Vietnamese people are the victim of the communists. They treat them, badly. Firstly, they seized all the property of the civilian. Can you imagine about the change of currency? That's the trick. That is the trick. Firstly, they changed the currency of the South Vietnamese, community by, their currency. And then after that, a couple of years or so, 1975, 1979, and 1985. 3 times of change currency. Every time they change the currency, that meant the time they rob you badly. In 1975, the Vietnam currency, about 20 cents of the Vietnam dong, equivalent to $1. 20 cents, remember what I'm saying. 20 cents, but in 1985 and nowadays, 22,000 Vietnam dong for $1. That means more than 10,000 times, downgrading, the currency. That, the way they rob, people. To the children, they do it another way. The children born under, the South Vietnam, regime, they sort them out to eliminate them, out of the, the university. The children just get the high school diploma and then finish.
Brent?
No way. That's it. And so, the generation of the, the South Vietnam, young generation of South Vietnam regime, are most of them ill-educated.
Brent, I just wanted
Yes.
to add, now,
Peter.
I wonder if other panelists here, in East Germany, at one time, I forgot exactly the year, but we were told on a Saturday that all the money that we had, and many people saved money so they could perhaps escape to the West, but on a Saturday afternoon, we were told that new currency was being issued the following day, and if you saved more than a certain amount, you were not a good communist. So many people, just like our friend here from Vietnam said, they lost everything. They lost all their savings. As a matter of fact, that had a big impact with my father when that happened. And it was devastating, absolutely devastating, because overnight you would lose everything. And I'm just wondering if other panelists have experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
We know that
Yeah.
Peter
The
wanted
same.
to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it seems to be a communist
Economics.
Right. Well,
technique, you
Pete-
know?
East
Peter,
Germany happened 55. In Czechoslovakia, it was 5 years after the communist coup. May 1, 1953, my family lost everything. And before, during the war, the generation before lost everything. So Monday we were supposed to come, and for $10,000, you got $10,000 new. But then it was 1 to 10, 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000. That was what Obama calls, redistribution. We lost everything. And my wife here, we are afraid because I bet they are trying to find out what would be the most convenient way to take money of yours
Yeah.
and redistribute them
There's,
wherever. So it
Yeah,
happened in
yeah.
every country. Vietnam,
Yeah.
Germany, me.
right.
Russia.
So
In
we're-
Cuba,
Russia too.
they also changed the currency overnight.
Yeah.
So people lost everything. But I want to mention something very important about Cuba before the panel is over, is how they control the people. They created something called committees for the defense of the revolution in every single neighborhood, in every single city. And those people would watch you what you were doing in your own home. They would enter. If you were meeting with so many people, who is these people? Why are you here? then they were the ones that were distributing the meager things that they got, like one pair of pants a year, one pair of shoes a year. And the other thing that they did in every single factory, they had an intelligence working for the state security of Cuba, and they were always interrogating the people in the factory. Has anyone here criticized Fidel Castro? Did anyone say anything against the government? So there was this fear of people of even talking to one another, because they didn't know if they talked to Peter over here, maybe Peter then will tell that I spoke against Fidel Castro. So that was a constant fear that the people in Cuba had. Also, the other thing that they did was they expelled most of the priests and the bishops of Cuba. They confiscated all the Catholic schools, Catholic universities, and then they began to try to break the family, something that the communists are great at doing. They created schools in the countryside called Escuelas del Campo, taking middle school kids away from their parents, put them in the middle of nowhere. Half a day they have to cut cane or plant crops or pick crops, and the other half a day they were indoctrinated. But many young girls, 13, 14-year-old, were sexually abused even by teachers, and when they arrived home in the summer, they were pregnant. Cuba had the highest abortion rate anywhere. Anywhere. Suicides, you mentioned suicides. One of the highest suicides is also Cuba. So it's a terrible situation. And communism brings you destruction, fear, oppression, death, imprisonment. That's what communism has done everywhere in the world. And that's why we have to fight it.
So before I turn to you, Tatiana, I just want to say it's interesting, the talk about currencies. If anybody's noticed, we've been having a little bit of issue in this country with our currency of late. And we also have the whole notion of cryptocurrencies, these shadow currencies arising, which makes you wonder where some of these things are going and what threats we might face that are similar. They're talking about tattling on neighbors and living in fear. Tatiana, what was it like to live in an environment where neighbor was turning on neighbor and where you were constantly aware of that knock on the door coming, that knock that your friend, you talked about with your Christian friend about when's it coming for us?
You see, I told you, even cat works for KGB. It was saying in my family, okay? So usually, Engels lived with woman until her dying days, and he took his child outside of marriage. They had wonderful family life, both of them. But you see, the problem is, if you want to understand communism, take just 10 statements of Communist Manifesto. Everything is there. You have 10 commandments and 10 statements of Communist Manifesto. Please, you should not covet your wife, your neighbor's wife, your neighbor. You shouldn't covet. Abolition of property. It's a hymn. It's a bottle hymn of cheaters, of losers. And communism, it's conspiracy of losers against achievers. Right. It's envious people who want to drag you down, dwarfs, who's envious to tall people. You know, this is the problem. It doesn't matter. They want to drag you down and equalize with yourself and make you equal. If this person knows math and my son is idiot and he cannot learn math, I not will teach my son math. I take this guy down. You're not supposed to be in the gifted program. We're all supposed to be stupid. This is the idea of communism. Equality in stupidity.
She's not at all passionate. We would like it if you could get more passionate, Tatiana. So let's turn our attention as we get near the end here. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on today in the United States. So it was interesting that when I spoke here last year, I spoke on a day that we did a story at Human Events about how the FBI had been using social media to encourage people to report on friends and family if they saw any social media activity that seemed untoward. That was how I opened my talk. Today that I sit here, we just did a story talking about Enrique Tarrio being arrested, again, for political crimes that don't seem to make a whole lot of sense, except I think they'll make sense to the people on this panel. And it seems that every time I show up here, we're pointing at and looking at some new example of what looks an awful lot like totalitarianism here in the United States. So I want each of you to take a little bit of time to share your thoughts on what you see going on in America today.
making the America red for their purpose of financial and support. That, you know, my Vietnamese community, I learned that for sure, you know. But, you know, because of, you know, the American law is very, very loose. And so they did so.
So being infiltrated, right? So Peter, Wolf, your thoughts today on what's going on in America. Is everything rosy?
I could probably talk for a long time what's wrong with America, but I would, if with your permission, I'd like to say some things that are right about America.
Should I give him permission? Is that okay? You have permission.
I wrote down a few notes. In my mind, and from my experience, America is a land of endless opportunity. I just read today a 16-year-old in Wisconsin started a maple syrup company. A 16-year-old. I believe that families are fundamental building block in America. And I would encourage an ideal family where the mother takes care of the children and I know I'm probably kind of bigoted here, but ideally a mother takes care of the children and the father earns a living. Maybe sometimes that doesn't work out that way and they're single moms and so on, and the roles might be reversed. But have a family. It is very important that those families teach the Ten Commandments. You know, we see stealing and dishonesty rampant these days. These are fundamental truths that people live for thousands of years. And I think if we, as parents, raise children that understand right and wrong, then America can flourish. Small businesses, thank you. Small businesses are the building block of the economy here. And we need to fight for freedom. And we need to fight for freedom, but bridle it with some respect towards deity, because that gives you inner strength to not just go rampant. I wrote down that we need to look to the future, and we need to teach our children correct principles, and don't mess with our Constitution. I believe that the Constitution was a divinely inspired document, and we should do absolutely everything. And I think every country has wrong things with it, and America has plenty of wrong things. But we need to look for the good and make it better. And we start by teaching our children, because they're the next generation.
Wonderful. So I've had a chance to spend time since we got here with Frank. I rode with him from the airport yesterday for quite a while. And I suspect that there's a few things that Frank might be concerned about with regard to what he sees happening in America today. Frank, why don't you share a few of those?
Well, the first thing I'm concerned was that we had a rigged election in 2020. President Trump won with 80 million votes, and the election was stolen with the help of big tech, woke multinational corporations, that socialist press, and China, who owns Dominion voting systems that uses a software called Smartmatic that was done in Venezuela to cheat on elections. We need to ban every single electronic voting machines, or we shall never have election integrity in the United States. I am so happy that that lady back there, Felicia from New Hampshire, is working very hard to eliminate all of these cheating machines from the state of New Hampshire.
This is not
Good
a
for you,
family
Felicia.
program.
Also, I want to say that we live in a police state, sadly, but we do. For example, you see that TV there? If that's a smart TV that you have in your home, like I have in mine, the CIA can listen to your conversation with the TV off. They listen to what we talk. They know who our friends are. They know what we buy. They know if we're a conservative or liberal, depending the newspapers that we read or the magazines that we read. They know everything that we do. And that is very, very dangerous because the technology that can help us, that technology can enslave us. And unfortunately, we also have something in Switzerland called Davos, the World Economic Forum, and our work operations are there, and they want to enslave humanity by doing a reset of capitalism to communist economy worldwide. And those are the people from the New World Order.
Right.
And I've written a book on it, on the New World Order threatens America and the world. So there are a lot of problems that we have, but let me just say this before we go, that we are not going to allow communism in the United States of America. We have 22 states, including the free state of Florida, not the free state of California, unfortunately, but the free state of Florida, the free state of Texas, 22 states that have Republican governors and both houses dominated by Republicans. And we, in these 22 states, we're going to declare null and void every single unconstitutional executive order by the half-demented Biden, who is a communist, along with most of, unfortunately, the center-left party is no longer what it used to be. The Democratic Party is now a predominantly Marxist party in power. But there are too many of us, 80 million of us, are more than the 60 million that voted for Biden, and 25 million that voted for Biden have buyer's remorse because they're seeing the disaster that our government is. So if we have free and fair elections, we will take the Senate, we will take the House, and we, each of us here, have to say, we will not allow America to be communist. Now, the 5 of us here had a country to go, which was America. We had a country to go. But Ronald Reagan said the following: if we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. So each of us here has to pledge we will fight communism in America. America will never be a communist nation. Never. Never, never.
I told you he might have something to say. So, Peter, we're always trying to remember who followed the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. So now you get to follow that from Frank. Tell us what your thoughts are.
I would like to summarize issues on informers. In the Soviet Union, USSR fell 1991. 1989, communism fell in Czechoslovakia, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. Within a year, the guy named Cibulka, it's called Cibulka lists, they published informers over the past 40 years of communism. These files were, and it's very scary, very, very, very thick. I looked up the names. There was a boy, my best friend from the 3rd grade. Miloš Pojar was his name. He's already, gone. I called him, and we had a beer next day. And he really cried. At his age, he cried. He said, I was sorry they pushed me to the army for incredible things, so I just signed up with them. So I just spilled whatever. The second one was also one of my best friends. And as you know, in the communist regime, we talked 3 languages. We talked only with mother or father, our language. Second language, we talked to friends or best friends. And totally different language, we talked at school. And this is just awful. I want to tell you this is just very awful. Can I go to my concluding remarks?
we're gonna hear from Tatiana first with regard to her thoughts.
Tatiana, okay.
So my fear in turning to Tatiana about what's going on in the United States today is that she might not have a thought or two. Tatiana, if you've got anything to share about what you see going on in America today, please share it.
I was kicked 5 times from Facebook, 7 times from Quora. Actually, censorship in America reminds me of my old Soviet Union. I feel I'm at home now, finally. You know, let me tell you something. What is this amendment called regarding freedom of speech? I can tell you this is the most important one. It's more important even than a right to carry weapon. Because if people shut up, everyone, not allowed to talk, not allowed to express themselves, if we have practically companies which exercise censorship today, and everyone, even President of the United States, cannot fight them. We shut him up. Trump was shut up. You know, guys, an American sit tight and pretend like nothing happens. You know, guys, you already live in the Soviet Union. What do you want? Why are you not moving? Why are you not doing anything? It's censorship left and right. Parents afraid to talk in school and parents' meetings. My daughter has children, and she's hiding. And she met some guy who told her what his children vaccinated. She told him, you know what, I don't know, but he finally confessed, I'm lying, I don't want my children to be vaccinated. But school insists. So people are already lying to each other, pretending to be like in step with the school, with the stupid policy about vaccination. American government work like a salespeople for Pfizer, pushing all those vaccination, which is like crazy, absolutely crazy. For children, it's human sacrifice, what we're doing. It's human sacrifice. You know, in my family, in my own family, I have a big family. All my sons, my daughter, everyone who was vaccinated, everyone had COVID. I was not vaccinated. Here I am. And all my friends, no COVID, no nothing. You see?
I bet nobody's surprised. I bet COVID was afraid of you.
Yeah, sure.
If I was a virus, I'd go elsewhere.
You know what? Americans used to be nations of brave. Now it's a nation of cowards. And cowardice, it's not tyrants who create slaves. It's slaves who create tyrants. And Americans became slavish. They do whatever they told to do. They give everything they ask to give. It's Soviet Union. Guys, you know, I have plenty of immigrant friends from Soviet Union. We have a huge community here in Silicon Valley of Russians who immigrated, Russian Jews who immigrated. We all have parties. People came here in 74, like 40 years ago to 35 years ago. You know what we are mourning? We are mourning America we came to. We came to different America, completely different. We missing honesty. You know, I can tell you, I spent 10 years of my life, first 10 years in the United States, trying to understand why America is so great, so beautiful, and my country I came from is so shitty. You know what? I spent 10 years and I found the answer. You know, America was built on Judeo-Christian values. People there were honest. I came to Phoenix, Arizona. Houses were open. People would leave keys in ignition and go for shopping. Today, people in San Francisco are afraid to leave car on the street. Even when you're sitting at home, they coming into your house and rubbing it in front of you. In Sunset District in San Francisco. You know, it's completely different. It's San Francisco, I'm a tour guide. I made my money tour guiding. I cannot show the city anymore. I'm ashamed. It's so dirty. People got raccoons. I got raccoons in my house because it's so dirty. San Francisco became den of thieves in the middle of the garbage dump. And this is because it's one party, communist, people who, mayors of the city, who think about, you know what, I came to this lady and I said, you know, we're fighting. It's so dirty on the streets. Why you're not cleaning? When I came here, it was every week cleaning. Now it's only twice a month. Oh, with crazy eyes. But we're fighting straws, you know, plastic straws we're fighting. You know, one hospital uses more plastic than the whole United States uses plastic straws, okay? And those idiots spend time on total idiotic projects, totally idiotic. And you know, Americans are silent. We're totally silent. This is what's scary. You guys became Soviets. It's not like your government became Soviet. Americans became Soviet. We're scared, we're cowards. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, at least somebody's up here speaking on our behalf. You're not silent. We love that. So when we were planning this, the panel asked if they could each give a closing statement. So we're going to do that now. We'll ask you all to be brief if you can be, because we want to take a few questions from the audience. But before we do that, what I would like to do is point out, I hope that all of you tonight caught the real meaning of this. So it's very typical for people to put together panels. We see them on TV all the time. And the members of the panels are all media celebrities, and they've got long, interesting resumes, and they're very well educated, and they all sound quite marvelous. They also haven't lived a real life. You have a panel up here tonight of 5 very real people who have lived very real lives. And so this is special by their normalcy. These are regular people, none of whom asked to be born into and suffer the way they did. And yet, here they are, sharing their stories. And that makes this simply extraordinary. I hope everybody sees the real beauty in that. So, let's turn to Sutton and share with everyone your closing thoughts.
Okay. Firstly, I don't have a skeptical view, but I can say America is now a real mess.
Yeah.
To face it, I plead you, be aware of dirty politics. Please look closely into the professional politician life to make a smart vote to choose our lawmaker. Don't vote for the cowards. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Peter Wolf, your closing statement?
Well, I may be a little bit disagreement on the, as I pointed out before, I still believe that America is great. It's the greatest country in the world, absolutely the greatest. The opportunities are absolutely endless here in America. And yes, we have a lot of problems and we have a lot of issues, but we also have a lot of good people. And maybe the good people don't get the visibility that the other groups get, especially with the media nowadays. But I think there are an awful lot of good people, and I can see that in your faces. I love America. I would do it in a heartbeat again. I would go through everything that I've went through. And I love my family. I'm very proud of them. And one of my daughters has 6 children. And she home teaches every one of them. Mm. And that's the kind of parent. That's the kind of parent that we need to encourage our children to be. And with that, America will become great again.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
By the way, I did want to mention, and I
Please.
just wanted to mention that a good friend of mine, Paul Cooper, he's actually a very renowned screenwriter. He passed away only a little while ago. But he wrote a book after we became friends. And I brought a few copies. And if you like, you can get one later on. I have to sell it to you because I pay for it, but $10 would be fine. And
The title, they're asking what the title is.
the title is Because I Can. And it's a story about me coming to America, escaping, first of all, Germany, East Germany, then coming to America and integrating into America. It also includes when in 2009 I met up by accident Michael Reagan, Ronald Reagan's son, and he invited me to come to East Germany, back to Germany in 2009 to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. It just so happened that that was my 50th anniversary of me leaving East Germany. So I have an epilogue that deals with that, and it's quite interesting. Obviously you don't have enough for everybody, but it's on Amazon as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Peter. Tatiana, some brief closing remarks? Your personal statement? You haven't said much. You've been kind of held back a little bit. It's time to let it go. Wrap it up.
In 1989, this time Senator Biden came to Moscow. And it was time when it was refuseniks in prison, dissidents were in psychiatric hospitals tortured. And when Soviet government talked to him, and this is recorded actually, it was recorded, he said, you know what, actually we don't care about this. Let my voters think that I'm doing something, but he asked Soviet government to help him to build show for his American voters. Do you know who is the president today in the United States? He's traitor, disgusting traitor. It's number one. It's number part of my statement. Number two.
There's more.
Number two. When Obama won, people said, but he won not in a voting booth. He won in university in classrooms. He won in the classrooms. I beg you, watch very closely your children's education. You don't understand what's going on campuses. I was there at the age of 50. I saw this. I was horrified. The person who is teaching history in one of the schools kicked me out from the panel, neighbor, whatever. You see, today, the worst source of poisoning, educators. Educators and media and educators. You know, guys, Americans need to take care of them, but main thing, what everyone can do, teach your child, open the Bible, show 10 Commandments, and maybe show him Marxist statement, and so he will understand the difference, because we're in juxtaposition. This is my case.
Wonderful. Thank you. Peter Palacek, the man who brought us all here today, give us your closing statement.
Before we came to this room, it was shared with me that hundreds of convoy truckers outside of DC are watching this meeting. So we thank them very much for all the freedom trucking convoy. Thank you for your work. Here is my closing. 5 of us have told you what it's like to live under tyranny of communism. 5 of us refused to be communist slaves. In Czechoslovakia, we used to compare communism to cancer. Cancer destroys your body, your mind, your spirit. Communism does the same. For 20 years, I was ordered what to study, I was ordered where to work, I was ordered what to say, and I was coached how to think. In communism, it's some 5% of the population, a gang of naive fanatics creating their new class, trying to impose Marxist tyranny by terrorizing and enslaving the other 95%. You now know that communism is extremely cruel, unbearably oppressive, brings nothing but misery, loss, and death. Don't let this marvelous country of ours, fall under communism. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Frank, take us out with a little bit of fire.
Okay, communism is a totalitarian system completely at odds with individual liberty, freedom of opportunity, and free market capitalism. Communism brings misery, hunger, destruction, oppression, implement death and to the dissidents that you mentioned so much, and imprisonment, and greater inequality. My concerns about America are the following. We are indoctrinating our students in our public schools. The two teachers' union, the American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association, are run by communists. They are teaching critical race theory. They are teaching Black Lives Matter communist curriculum, pre-K-12, and they're teaching the New York Times 1619 Project. And this is going all over America. And that is a great concern because if we lose our youth, it's over. That's one big concern. My other great concern, besides the economy going down the drain, open boundaries, 2 million people coming here, gang members, communists, everybody coming here. We don't even know who they are. But my biggest concern is national security. We have in the Pentagon woke generals. When Barack Obama was president and Joe Biden, his mind was okay when he was vice president, they fired 200 admirals and generals that were patriots, and they replaced them with New World Order guys, extreme leftists. And instead of worrying about going to war someday with maybe Russia and China, they're teaching critical race theory to our soldiers so they can hate each other. So that's a great concern that I have. My concern is, can we survive 3 more years with Biden in America? Can we survive it? When they have seen what happened in Afghanistan, where we abandoned 85 billion of our base equipment to the Taliban. And who was watching that? Russia and China, Iran. We embolden our enemy because of the extreme weakness of the Biden administration, which is why we had what's going on in Ukraine. Do you think that Putin would have invaded Ukraine if Donald Trump was president? No. Absolutely not, right? So weakness invites our enemies to attack us. And my biggest concern is, can we survive 3 years with this half-demented communist guy by the name of Joe Biden? I hope that we can. But the main thing we need to do is to pray to God every day to save America and to save each of us.
Thank you, Frank. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your panel. These are people who have paid the price. These are people who are victims of communism. I think you maybe want to give them a round of applause before we take some questions.
Thank you. Thanks. We're clapping at you.
So we're going to have some questions here. I want all of you to know that at Human Events, we are going to have each of these panel members write a piece for us to publish. They'll be able to write whatever they want to write. Wait till you read Frank's. He's already turned his in. But we'll be publishing those over the next X number of weeks as they bring them into us. And all the things that they might have wanted to say tonight and didn't get a chance to, they'll have a chance to say in writing forever in our publication. All right. You know, I never should have given up my reading glasses. And no, don't give them back to me. I'm going to try this. All right. First question. Please talk about the battle for religion, the state wanting to eliminate religion, and the citizens who want to worship. Who'd like to take that question on first? And let's make sure our answers are concise so that we can get a few questions in here. Who wants to talk about religion in a communist country? Tatiana? I'm shocked.
Okay, as I already told, Marxist manifesto, Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, has a statement Marx said that religion is opiate for the people. So every communist society, it's militantly atheistic, militantly. And when I came to this wonderful school called the San Francisco State University, I saw a lot of 17-year-old kids, 17, 18-year-old kids who came just from where Riverside, whatever, being in churches. And they look at the professor, and professor say, forget about your churches, forget, we'll teach you sex. We'll give you, they defiling students and defiling children. And practically showing them that religion is Marxist ideas. They take them away from religion. And you know what? This is practically destruction of moral basis of society. It's destruction of the best thing which America had and which actually differentiates America from other countries. Because why other countries so corrupt, terribly corrupt? Because absence of internal policeman called God. People, I'm not doing religious discussion, but when people feel that someone watching them, God watching them, they wouldn't steal, they wouldn't kill, they wouldn't do bad things. When people doing, outside policemen already defunded, they don't exist. But when people even lost internal policemen, outside policemen, it's last year looting in every city, and looting everywhere, and killings and crime, horrible. This is what's going, no police outside and no police inside is God. This is my statement.
Thank you.
I agree with Tatiana, and I'd like to emphasize that it is the parents that need, this country may not have a lot of religion, probably more than, like she said, more than any other country in the world, but it is the parents' responsibility to teach their children. And one of the best ways you can do that is just to go to church or the synagogue or wherever you wish to worship on a Sunday with your children.
So no moderator in their right mind would read the next question. But here I am, so I'm going to read it. And I'm going to read it and direct it to Frank, because I think Frank would like to answer this question. It's an easy one. Is the current Pope a communist, or is the Pope a Catholic? Frank, would you like to address that?
Well, first let me tell you that I'm a practicing Catholic. My dad was a cousin of the first Cardinal of Cuba, Cardinal Arteaga, who was an anti-communist. I have a cousin who is a Franciscan priest, another cousin that is a nun, and I'm a practicing Catholic. We have a communist Pope in the Vatican. He supports the theology of liberation of the Catholic Church. And not only he's a communist, he's a leader of the New World Order. When they unveiled in the United Nations Agenda 2030, who was the keynote speaker? None other than Pope Francis. And when he became a pope, he brought all the main communists from Latin America, which they have an organization called Movimientos Populares, to the Vatican to greet them. And then the following year, he went to Bolivia, and he got a cross this big with a hammer and a sickle below. That was done by a Jesuit priest that was trying to overthrow the government of Bolivia and was killed by the military. Luis Espinel is that Jesuit priest with that sacrilegious cross. So the Pope went and prayed there in the tomb of that traitor Jesuit, and he said, they killed you because you love the poor. And then he met with all the communists in Latin America, in Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia, next to Hugo Morales, the president of Bolivia, that had a jacket with the Che Guevara, and then he told all these communists, I share the faith that you do, the revolutionary faith. So he's a communist, it's the devil that put him, and by the way, there was a coup d'etat in the Vatican, because they didn't like Benedict XVI, because he was a conservative. The coup d'etat was engineered by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, George Soros. They squeezed the Vatican finances, and they forced Benedict XVI to quit. So they threw away, in a coup d'etat, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Soros, and people like that in the United States. That's how they got rid of Benedict XVI. He didn't resign just for no reason at all. Yeah, the Pope is a communist and a New World Order leader worldwide.
So, how many people think I picked the right guy to answer that question? Raise your hand. I did my research. All right, here's the last question. And Peter, we'll start with you, and Sutton, I want to give this one to you as well. It's a great question, especially given the positive attitudes that have been shown on this panel tonight, despite the dire warnings. Somebody asked, how is it that you're not still bitter? How have you overcome the bitterness? Peter, how do you have a smile on your face tonight?
Listen, you've got to be positive, actually. You've got to fight. My father was fighting all his life against Nazis, then against communism, 13 years in prison. In prison, 2% of population ended up, in communist prison. Who was with him in the prison? All management of BSA, Boy Scouts of America, that was abolished. YMCA, all priests, all clergy, and ours would be, Hannity and all these guys would end up in the prison. You still have to be positive. This is nowhere to go. We all came to this country. Where the hell are we going to escape now?
No place.
Right?
No place.
This is it. This is it right
This is
here.
the last stand.
Right. So, Sutton, you talked about how you don't blame. It seems to be a remarkable attitude. What is your key to living this happy life after all you've been through, especially the torture that you experienced?
I can tell only what I'm feeling. I survived the audio of the communist time I spent. Firstly, I always thinking about my family. I tried my best to come back to them. Secondly, I pray God to help me to overcome this situation. Thirdly, I can say that I don't know how can I still alive. With 13 years in prison, with that suffering thing upon me. When I got released from the prison, after almost the other one leaving the prison, I'm among the rest of them, still being there. I think, oh my God, is it the real? Is it the real thing to me, happening to me? And then so I start almost crying about what's happening to me that day, that 1988, after 13 years in prison. And the second surprise was my sister, my adoptive sister, is still living in America. I wrote a letter to her, and she responded immediately, and she's very, excited that I'm still alive, because, my adoptive parents passed away, all of them passed away before, my releasing from the prison. And she said, okay, I'm eager to hear from you. I'm eager to get help, to get, to help you. What do you want now? I said, okay, only thing I want that leaving the Vietnam. And thereafter, 2 years after, I got here in 1991. That's a miracle to me.
Yes.
Remarkable. There's something about saving the best till last, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been your panel. I want you to give them one more giant ovation, and when you do, don't leave, because after you give them a giant ovation, we're going to have just a little tiny bit of fun. So please recognize these folks one more time for what they've shared.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. So now, everybody sit back and relax. We're going to have a little bit of fun. How many people were here when I was here in July? There's a few. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for coming back. That took a lot of courage. So remember that you were here for a second. I said I was going to say some thank yous, and I do. I want to thank the Liberty Forum for allowing this to happen and for making a dream of doing something become a reality. We couldn't have done this at Human Events ourselves, and we needed a partner, and we found the greatest partner on the West Coast, and or anywhere else, I think, in the country. So extraordinary to come back, and very, very, very grateful. I do want to thank my good friend sitting over here, Chris Barron, who said so much nice stuff about me when he introduced me. I still messed up Ken Pope's title at the Victims of Communism Foundation. Chris Barron, who's our public relations person, see him all the time on Fox News. He's a very great professional, a very great friend, and has made the last year, which was nearly impossible, successful. And so I'm grateful to him. There, I got you back. Oh, by the way, did I thank my publisher, Jeff Webb, for letting me do this so that I still have it? Thanks, boss, if you're watching still. Hope he's awake. Anyway, for those of you who were here when I spoke, if you'll recall, I told a story at the end about an event I'd been at in South Dakota and about this patriot who had run barefoot on rocks to stop some people from being turned away from the event. And I shared the message that if we were going to pay the price, if we were going to do what we had to do to save this country, we were going to have to take off our shoes and run barefoot on those rocks because we were going to have to sacrifice. Well, that lady is here tonight, the girl that ran barefoot on the rocks. She ran our production crew tonight. She's my favorite American dissident, and she has a special gift for your very own Jane. So, Felissa, would you come up? Give her a big round of applause. You'll notice she's walking better. Feet are healed.
Hi, everybody. Jane, Miss Jane. So I want you guys all to know that I got off the trucker's convoy just to come here. They're all watching you. And if you guys want to know what you would do if you were faced with the option to get on the train or Auschwitz or stand up, what you're doing right now is the answer. And it's not enough, so keep going. Miss Jane, join me on the rocks. Welcome to the club. She did such an amazing job. You guys have no idea. The whole time, Deep State has been trying to shut us down on the internet over there. But we're prospering, right? And this is just such an amazing event, and I really thank you, and you can share with everybody. We're our own special club. And thank you to all you guys for your bravery.
Thank you so much. I'm embarrassed and you're in trouble. This has been a terrific night. This truly has been a dream of mine come true, and I am so grateful, grateful for what we shared tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. Good night.
You're awesome. You're my favorite.
Good night, everybody. Stay in the fight. Remember what you learned tonight. Carry these lessons with you. And remember, if it seems like you're putting yourself at too much risk to stand up and fight back, just remember what these folks did. Thanks, you all, for coming.